Hello again, it's Matthew here from Matthew North Music, and it's the start of a new year, so I'd like to wish you all a happy new year and I hope you have a great time in 2022. Now, today's video is all about this thing, but before I get into it, I just want to quickly say, if you enjoy the content on this video, please think about hitting the subscribe button and hitting the like button if you enjoy this video, because every subscriber really helps this channel and it just helps get these videos out there. So if you haven't already yet subscribed, please think about hitting the subscribe button. If you already have, thank you very much. Right, back to the video. Now, I have literally just picked this up. This was on Marketplace and I popped down to Cornwall and I picked this up and I've been home about an hour. So we're going to go through this together. Now, what is this? Well, this is what you might think is a very big box with a lot of buttons on it, and you'd be correct in that assumption. And this is actually a drum machine and it's made by Hammond. Now, Hammond are probably the most famous manufacturer of electric organs. However, there's a slight twist because Hammond themselves didn't actually make this drum machine. It was actually made by Acetone, and we've covered Acetone drum machines before on this channel. But they made this drum machine for Hammond with the idea that they had their badge on the side and it goes on top of the Hammond electric organ. But it's actually made by Acetone, and of course, not long after this drum machine was made, Acetone then became part of the Roland organisation. So there's going to be some similarities between this and the early Roland drum machines. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you through this machine exactly as I find it. We're going to have a look inside and then we're going to fire it up, see if it works, and if it does, we'll listen to some sounds. Now, the first thing to note is this. It's got a rather nice Perspex music stand, which when not being used can just be plonked there out the way, and I actually really like this. I think this is much neater and tidier than the sort of the wooden stand that was on the Roland TR-77 or even on the earlier Acetone machines. And seeing this machine is probably about 45 plus years old, the fact this is still in pretty good nick for an old piece of Perspex is rather nice to see. Now, I'm sure somebody's probably got one of these drum machines. They probably think that would make a really good control panel for doing modifications and circuit bending the hell out of this drum machine. But that's not something I'm going to do. But I'm going to show you roughly how that can be achieved. Now, I really don't think this needs any introduction at all. But we can safely say that that plug is not very well wired. In fact, that looks pretty dangerous. So the first thing I'm going to do before I even look at the machine is to change this plug, or rather rewire it. Looking from left to right on the drum machine, we've got our tempo control here. Interestingly, this also doubles up as the power button rather than the volume control on most electronic equipment. We've then got this silent sound button. This is just basically a start-stop, and this is just on a little switch there. We then have our collection of various drum patterns, ranging from waltzes to marches and polkas, to a sort of a jazz and rock section here. And then at the end, we've got the Latin sounds with samba, bossa nova, cha-cha, etc. And generally with these drum machines, it's the Latin sounds that are actually the most interesting. The first thing to see on the back of the drum machine is the plate with the serial number and the model number on it, and it says they're made in Japan. Interestingly, if we look at the mains cable here, it's still got its coil relief tie on, and it looks absolutely identical to the same type of cable tie that you would find on anything made by Roland of the similar era. So a lot of the parts were obviously sourced from the same place, and eventually Roland went on to build these drum machines anyway. And we have two jacks on the back, audio output and a foot switch to turn the drum machine on and off. And we also have this thing here, a balance control. Now, what that does, it very much like on the Roland CR78, you can turn it down so you just get the lower frequency drums like the kick drum. And if you turn it up to the top, then you get more of the higher frequency drums, things like cymbals and hi-hats and percussion sounds. Now we've had a quick look at the drum machine on the front and the back, next thing to do is to take it apart. Now, one interesting thing is there are 3 screws here that are missing. Now, this makes me think either this had a stand designed for it that went into those 3 holes, or more likely somebody's had this apart in the past. Okay then, the moment of truth. It's a very clean looking drum machine. It's absolutely spotless. It's absolutely immaculate. And the thing that's really surprised me is the power supply section here. It looks like it's brand new. I mean, those capacitors, they look like I could have just bought them from RS or CPC yesterday. And I don't know how well you can see the transformer here, but it does have a date code and it says 050971. So that's actually a year and a day before I was born. So yeah, 1971 it looks like for this drum machine. And I'm just astounded how clean it all is. Now, when we looked at things like the Acetone before, they didn't have these plug-in connectors for the circuit boards to go in. And, you know, these are really neat. Everything's nicely laced up here. And once again, this board here, which has got all the switching circuit for the sounds, is, again, very, very neat and tidy. Now, there's obviously a big chip here, and I can't help wondering if that's some kind of CPU and if this might even be sort of logic computer controlled. As I said, I've never seen one of these before until I bought this, and I haven't even looked it up on the internet, but it certainly looks like it's got a bit more going for it than some of the earlier drum machines that I've seen. Now this here is something quite special, because this is the soundboard. This has all the sounds of the drum machine on here, and they're even labelled here as you go in. So in essence, what you could do is you could unclip this, and you could then get a MIDI to trigger module, and then you probably need to stick it through another board to change the voltage, because I think these need higher than 5 volts. I think these probably need something like 9 or 10 volts to trigger. But then you could actually play this off a computer without much modification at all. And I think that's one of the reasons that people are showing an interest in these sort of machines, because they are quite easy to modify. And even with the sort of older machines that have got lots of rows of diodes to set the patterns, you can actually just hardwire to the diodes, and then that will trigger the drums. But here we've got various tuning coils here, some description. But it's actually quite a relatively simple circuit. You know, there's not a huge amount of components on there, but you know, it does quite a lot. If I just take out one of these connectors, and we can see there, it's absolutely spotless, it's absolutely immaculate. Now, I'm really not sure about this, and the power supply has really got me baffled, but part of me wonders if the mains cable had been replaced at some point. But if it has, all the soldering is so neat, it brings me to think that possibly somebody may have actually completely rebuilt the power supply, because that power supply just looks too new for something that's 50 years old. Well, I do feel pretty confident that this drum machine will probably work. It's interesting to see that underneath where these screws were missing, that these are just parts of go straight to the chassis. So I think that this probably did have some kind of stand attachment that you could buy for it, so it could be a sort of standalone piece of equipment. Anyway, I'm going to put the back cover back on, and I'm going to give it a quick clean, and then I'm going to plug it in and we'll see what it sounds like. Okay, it's time to give a demo of this unit now. As you can see, lights are flashing and it does power up okay. And I kind of expected it to, because before I bought it, I did see it plugged in and lights were flashing. Now we have along here the usual selection of rhythms for the era. We start here with stuff that's in 6/8 and 4/4 time, so it's like waltzes, march, polka, that sort of thing. Then we've got things like Dixieland, jazz, blues rock, hard rock, and Liverpool, which could only mean one thing: a homage to the Beatles. So let's have a listen to Liverpool. And if I turn the tempo up a bit, sounds more like Leader of the Pack than Love Me Do, but anyway. Now we've got 4 variations of this drum pattern, and if I flick to B, and there's variation C, I'm going to turn the tempo down a bit, and variation D. Now I'll stop that. If we flick this into Auto-Vari mode, and we've got it set to 2 measures, and what will happen is it will play 2 measures of each variation of the drum pattern, and we'll start it now. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, and you can even see the indicator lights telling you what's happening there. And this is where the drum machine gets its name from, this Auto-Vari 64, because you can turn the knob right up to the top and you've got 16 measures. So it will play 16 lots of A, 16 lots of B, 16 lots of C, and just carry on. Now the other interesting thing is, you can see it's, if I go to the first one, you can see it's sort of cycling through on its own quite happily. But when you start it, it does a reset, so it then goes to the beginning of the song. And if we go to something else like Rumba, and it's just a good way to just audition the drum patterns, but I quite like the A one. If I turn the tempo up a bit. And that's got a kind of an OMD Human League quality about it, I think. So in conclusion then, I think this is one of the better drum machines to go for if you want something that you'd like to modify, because you can just get an edge connector and you can literally plug straight into the soundboard and get this thing playing off any device that you like. And there's certainly plenty of space on the back to mount MIDI sockets, etc. Or you could just have external triggers on it. I'm sure you can find the circuits online, and people like Circuit Benders do make converter boards for going from 5-volt signal to whatever these things require. Anyway, it's great to see you back on the channel, and I hope you come back for the next video. I've got a few interesting things and bits of kit to look at, especially if you're a Cure fan, and I'll leave it there for now. Anyway, I'll sign off now and let Auto-Vari play to you.